Well, hey everybody, I'm John Ritlin with every traditional Survivor Series elimination match ranked from worst to best. This is part 3. I have been ranking all 83, yes, 83 elimination matches that have taken place at Survivor Series. And oh boy, I'm barely in the top 30. So there's going to be a part 4 to this because as I get closer to the top, I'm going to be praising a lot of my favorites and everything, because as much as I'm going to slam the ones that are the worst, and if you haven't seen part 1 and 2, check out the links up here. Please give those a watch. Also want to make mention, thank you guys very much for getting the channel over 200,000 views for a little channel that's mostly produced on my phone or that myself and Durbinator, produced at his house. It's really appreciated. Thank you guys very much for letting me share my passion about professional wrestling with you guys and listen to my rants and all that stuff. And thanks for giving love to the movie reviews as well. So with that being said, also want to make mention of another ranking video. Every Survivor Series pay-per-view, ranked from worst to best. That'll be happening sometime next week. I still got to work on that, but with 28 matches remaining, expect part 4 up sometime after this. So, we start off with number 28. This is Rocky Maivia, Mark Marrow, Jake Roberts, and the Stalker. Barry Windham as a hunter in, camo stuff and everything. He's the game hunter. It's such good shit, pal. Vince, presumably. Versus Crush, Goldust, Jerry Lawler, and Triple H. It was Rocky Maivia's debut, Survivor Series 1996. Some may think that I'm being a bit kind with this match. Yes, if you look at it, was strictly just a showcase for Rocky, and he was booed out of the building. It was Madison Square Garden. He was booed out of the goddamn building, which is a shame. The fans recognized the talent, but they hated the gimmick. I hated the gimmick at the time. I mean, I was 15 years old, but I was like, oh, this is gonna work once they switch it, because like this gimmick isn't gonna work. But by God, this guy's got something. Also, you had Mark Marrow and Triple H were kind of capping off their feud after Triple H had beaten Mark Marrow for the Intercontinental Championship recently. And then you would actually have Goldust and Triple H feud soon after this into the Royal Rumble and Mania 13. And you had Lawler and Jake Roberts and stuff like that. And Windham and Crush were also there. But strictly a showcase for Rocky. He did get over as far as being put over and how he won, but yeah, the crowd still just fucking hate him, which is a shame because, by God, from the moment he arrived, he looked like he belonged. It took him a while, but boy, once he turned heel and everything, the rest is history. But it was an interesting start, and this was a pretty damn good elimination match, and one of my favorite pay-per-views in Survivor Series history. But is it my favorite? Well, you're going to check out that list that I talked about to see. Number 27, Ahmed Johnson, British Bulldog, Shawn Michaels, and Psycho Sid versus Dean Douglas, Owen Hart, Razor Ramon, Yokozuna. Wild card match is what it was called. Not wild card rule, dear God, we're not taking all that and everything, because there was only one show at the time. Well, there were syndicated shows also, but there was only Raw, there was no SmackDown. SmackDown was still about 4 years away. This was from Survivor Series 1995. Shawn and Sid had been allies and then feuded. And Dean Douglas and Razor had been feuding, Razor beat Dean for the Intercontinental Championship after Dean had just won it when Shawn relinquished it because he got beaten up by about 30 Marines. It was actually only one, but you also had Yokozuna there, and you had plenty of people. You had Bulldog and Owen, who would later be teaming by the next Survivor Series, which I'm actually going to be talking about later in this list. And it was just kind of nice because you got to have faces and heels and how would they work well together. And sure, okay, maybe on paper it was messy and there were a few spots that were, but it actually was a pretty damn fun match and a pretty fun usage of the elimination style match here. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Number 26, Team Angle versus Team Lesnar. Team Angle comprised of Bradshaw, Chris Benoit, Hardcore Holly, John Cena, and Kurt Angle. Team Lesnar, Brock Lesnar, A-Train, Big Show, Matt Morgan, and Nathan Jones. Survivor Series 2003. Remember Nathan Jones? Nathan Jones was a much better actor and everything than he was a wrestler. Not that he was necessarily awful, but he didn't seem to want to really stick around in it. I mean, he was given a pretty big, build and everything, and then the whole Mania 19 thing didn't work out. He was sent down for more seasoning, and then he came back more jacked than ever. Sweet Christ, he was more jacked than ever. Before the wellness policy evidently, was implemented. Not that I'm implying anything, but he wouldn't have been the only one. So this was capping off the Lesnar Angle feud as they had been feuding through most of 2003. This is also when they were kind of making Cena into a babyface. They tried to make him a tweener. It didn't necessarily work. They would eventually have to just morph him into a babyface. A-Train was also there. A-Train and Benoit had actually had a match at No Mercy 2003. And then Hardcore Holly had just come back from a neck injury that Lesnar had not actually given him. It was an accident. And they were going to feud into the Royal Rumble 2004. So there was a whole lot of good stuff here. There's actually some pretty damn entertaining, hard-hitting stuff here. And this did feature Cena picking up the Big Show, who had just won the United States Championship from Eddie Guerrero a month before. And this was some pretty good stuff. I actually really enjoyed this. And no, it wasn't as good as the other match that took place on other elimination match that took place on this show, but it was still pretty good, and I gotta give it a shout on here. Number 25, Team Barrett versus Team Orton. Team Barrett comprised of Cody, Dolph, Hunico. You know who Hunico became? Well, he became one of the GODs, and you know which one. You had Jack Swagger also, and Wade Barrett versus Team Orton, which was Kofi, Mason Ryan, Orton, Sheamus, and Sin Cara. Weird to see Orton and Kofi on the same team, especially with the whole stupid thing, and also the fact that Kofi had beaten Orton 2 years prior at Survivor Series when he beat him and Punk in quick succession. Well, then Punk and then Orton. But anyway, I digress. You had Welsh Batista there, a.k.a. Mason Ryan. It wasn't a bad match. Now, maybe I'm ranking this one a little bit higher just because of the people involved, and I thought they had a good, intermingling of some feuds here. It was a bit of a hodgepodge of teams, but all these guys were feuding with others. And by the way, Hunico was actually somebody that would become later Sin Cara's Camacho that was one of the GODs. It's so sad that I got that confused because, boy, my God, Tangaloa is doing so much better in New Japan now, isn't he? Good Lord. This was some pretty good stuff, though. You did have people that were old rivals that were teaming, and then people that would become rivals soon after. It was a nice way to mix some hodgepodge of parts. Not the greatest, obviously, but not that bad, and worked pretty well. Number 24, Ken Shamrock, Ahmed Johnson, and LOD versus Nation Domination, which comprised of Farouk, D'Lo Brown, Kama Mustafa, Lair to become the Godfather, then the Good Father, then the Godfather again. He is also Papa Shango. Oh boy, that was fun. And Rocky Maivia, Survivor Series 1997. This was pretty cool and kind of just a bit of an old war and everything because you had LOD and Ahmed Johnson that had feuded with the Nation of Domination at Mania 13. Then Ahmed joined the Nation of Domination and got injured again because that's all Ahmed Johnson did was either injure opponents or get injured. And then you just had a good mix of people here. And sure, not maybe the most technically sound match out there given all the people involved when pretty much your best worker was Ken Shamrock and D'Lo Brown actually were probably the best workers by this point. But it was what it was, and it was good with, the build behind it and the fact that these teams meant something at that time. Number 23, Team Raw versus Team SmackDown from Survivor Series 2017. Team Raw comprised of Angle, Braun, Finn, Joe, and Triple H versus Team SmackDown, which was Shane, Orton, Rude, Nakamura, and Cena. Cena was just there basically to take the fall pretty goddamn quickly. It was all about building what could possibly have been a Triple H Braun match and didn't end up actually happening, and that was actually rather hilarious. I actually think I'm always going to laugh about that because it was just fucking hilarious to see just how angry Braun got at him, and it became very meme worthy and everything. It was pretty cool stuff. This is also about Triple H and Angle starting their build towards a match that was going to happen in Mania 34 that had Stephanie with Triple H and Ronda Rousey with Kurt Angle and turned out to be so much fucking better than I ever imagined. I never imagined that match was going to be very good. It was just kind of sad that Team SmackDown kind of got squashed. I mean, you had Nakamura, you had Rude there, and they got squashed, and it was just fucking ridiculous. It just made no goddamn sense. It was just so weird. Team SmackDown was kind of just all hodgepodge together, but the match worked really well. It wasn't as good as the one the previous year. I'm going to get to that one a little bit later. But this was a pretty damn good match. I had the whole meme-worthy thing of Braun and Triple H, and that was some pretty good stuff. I actually really enjoyed that. Now we get almost into the top 20. We are at number 22, Team HBK, which was the Great Khali, JTG, Rey Mysterio, Shad Gaspard, Crime Time, and Shawn Michaels versus Team JBL, which was JBL, Morrison, Kane, Miz, and MVP, Survivor Series 2008. I'm putting something with the Great Khali near the top 20. This is in spite of the fact that the Great Khali was a goddamn idiot and couldn't do anything in the fucking ring. This was building the Shawn JBL feud, which would build into Royal Rumble 2009, and then would be blown off at No Way Out 2009, which was in Seattle, and I unfortunately couldn't go to due to finances and stuff like that. But anyway, enough of that. It's okay. I mean, I'm not going to regret not being able to go because it was at the Key Arena, and the Key Arena is ass. If you've ever been to the Key Arena, you know. This, however, was a pretty good match. You had more hodgepodge teams and stuff like that. You wouldn't have thought these parts would necessarily work, but they did. Kali being in it was a bit ridiculous, but they were still trying to utilize him and push him at this point. JBL had a much more focused team here, but it was really, really good. And again, would kick off the Shawn Michaels JBL feud. And then I'm sure that Shawn Michaels Triple H could have fought at some point, but nope, they reformed DX soon after, like sometime in the summer of 2009. So this was a whole lot of fun. Very good stuff with some great focus on the top guys and letting some other guys that you might not thought worked all that well together be in a match. Number 21, we go with the women. It's Team Raw and versus Team SmackDown from Survivor Series 2017. Alicia, Sasha, Bayley, Asuka, and Nia versus Team SmackDown. Becky, Naomi, Carmella, Natty, and Tamina. Asuka being the sole survivor was the only way they could go since they had this undefeated streak heading up. And I'd say that because she technically did lose a few matches, like a Battle Royal and stuff like that, and a couple things in the beginning, and they just, of her NXT run, they decided to just not recognize that. But anyway, whatever. I mean, there's no losses that count in the Battle Royal, except when they do. WWE is weird. Moving on. After she got to, the main roster, she beat Emma in the October pay-per-view, which is pretty damn good. And then Emma was released, and then Leo Rush got in the doghouse from being stupid. But whatever, that was 2 years ago. Maybe he learned. Who the fuck knows? Back to the women. Asuka being the sole survivor was the right call here. There was a good mix of all these other women, though. And Carmella. And I'm sorry, Carmella's not awful. I just don't understand why she keeps getting attention and focus in the ring when she's really not that good. And same with Tamina. I'm sorry, Tamina's only there because because Vince paid off, the police to stop her dad from going to jail because her dad was a fucking murderer. That's not Tamina's fault. But really, if it wasn't for having a famous dad, she wouldn't be there because she's always injured. It's turned into a bit more of a rant than I planned. With this, though, you had Alicia being the captain with the goofy hats and stuff like that. But at least Alicia could actually wrestle. And I don't know what the fuck they're doing with her now. I know she was moved to the alumni section. That's a bit of a weird career. That's unfortunate. But Asuka being the sole survivor was the right call. You had some other pieces you could work with her after that. And they were building towards her winning the championship at WrestleMania 34, except she fucking didn't. Oh boy. That was good stuff. They should have just had Carmella cash in that night. Just have Carmella cash in. I'm not saying that her cash in would have been the same as Seth Rollins, but then she could have pinned Charlotte. Then you could have had Asuka go after her. But anyway, at least the women got a good chance to have a showcase here. Number 20, 1-2-3 Kid, Tom Pritchard, Rad Radford, Louis Piccoli, by the way. Rad Radford was a weird name. And Skip versus Barry Horowitz, Bob Holly, Hakushi, and Mari Jannetty, Survivor Series 1995. The fact that, anything with Barry Horowitz, and nothing against Barry Horowitz, I mean, he got a bit of a push in 95, but the fact that Barry Horowitz was featured in a match like this was actually kind of funny. Just because he got over by losing constantly and then shockingly got a win and got a bit of a push and then got, jobbed out quickly. It was a good mix of weird pieces. 1-2-3 Kid had turned heel. Him and Jannetty had been a team before. It came down to those guys and was actually pretty smart as how you booked it. And you wanted to get 1-2-3 Kid over as more of a dickish heel. This is how you did it. Granted, the talent is pretty low on this because Bob Holly was still a sparky plug. Even though you could recognize the talent in him. And actually, all these guys were talented. It's just a lot of the gimmicks were shit. But it worked well. And it was a nice way to build some feuds. And then we get to number 19. It's the final women's match. The highest ranking women's match on this list. And for 83 matches, that is saying something. Because, in 30 years, I actually wasn't, or 30, plus years, I wasn't sure where I was going to rank all the women's matches. And I might even actually do another ranking list of every Survivor Series women's match ranked from worst to best, because there's more than just these. There are the championships, championship matches and stuff like that, and the champion versus champion stuff. So we'll see. Let me know if you want to see that in the comments. Or let me know on Twitter. I always put my Twitter handle down below. So, number 19, Team Raw versus Team SmackDown. Team Raw was comprised of Alicia, Bayley, Charlotte, Sasha, and Nia versus Team SmackDown, Alexa, Becky, Carmella, Naomi, and Natty. And you had you had Bayley and Charlotte kind of doing their feud and stuff like that, and you had a bunch of other good pieces here. I mean, really, only Nia was like the one that shouldn't have been there. But even at this point, this is before I guess she was injuring tons of people, or at least that we knew about. This is a good mix of women, given some good time, and it felt like this match actually mattered. It was nice to see all these women of varying in-ring ability get a chance to do some really good stuff, and they were able to. So while maybe it's not everybody's cup of tea, I enjoyed this match, and that's why it's in my top 20, because these women deserve that shout, and they deserve a chance to, be recognized as working really goddamn hard. We think it's number 18. It's Team Orton, which was Randy Orton, Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, and Maven and his glorious eyebrows versus Team Triple H. It was Batista, Edge, Snitsky, and Triple H, Survivor Series 2004. Whichever team won, one member of that team would get to run Raw for a week. That meant they had to give Maven a mic. That didn't work out so goddamn well. But anyway, this was pretty good. Maven taking some incredibly hard shots in this. I mean, good lord. Batista and Triple H was kind of building their feud and everything. And it was also working on the Orton Triple H feud that had been going since just after SummerSlam 2004 and into Unforgiven 2004. So yeah, it was good stuff, and Team Orton won. Orton's babyface run didn't last all that long, and he would turn heel shortly after the Royal Rumble 05 and then feud with The Undertaker for the rest of the year. A great feud. Hooray! So then we get to number 17, which is The Shield, Reigns, Ambrose, and Rollins versus the Real Americans. It wasn't just two members of the Shield, it was all three. And the Real Americans versus Cody, Goldust, Ray, and the Usos, Survivor Series 2003. After Cody and Goldust had captured the tag team championships recently from Rollins and Reigns, we got to see this match. It wasn't necessarily a blow-up because Cody and Goldust still had the championships, but this was some pretty good stuff with a mix of really good teams. Ray was also there. Ray would not be on WWE TV all that much longer, especially after the whole debacle at the 2014 Rumble when he was number 30 and Daniel Bryan wasn't there, and bugging Christ, poor Rey Mysterio got booed out of the goddamn building. Poor him. Really good tag work though. No complaints about this one. Number 16, Powers of Pain, Rockers, Bulldogs, Heart Foundation, and the Young Stallions versus Demolition, Brainbusters, Bolsheviks, Rougeos, and the Los Conquistadores, Survivor Series 1988. It's a bunch of teams in here, a 10-on-10 match, and it was good stuff. You know what? Looking at the time, I'm actually just going to go through every single one of these matches because I got about 20 minutes left. This was really good stuff with a bunch of teams that had been intermingling with each other, feuding over time. Demolition was either face or heel, feuding with Mr. Fuji or aligning with Mr. Fuji. Then you had the Powers of Pain that had aligned with Mr. Fuji and then weren't aligned with him. This was the last appearance of the British Bulldogs as a team in WWE because this was the infamous incident where Jacques Rougeau had hit Dynamite Kid with a roll of quarters, knocking some of his teeth out. Because Dynamite Kid was a bit of a prick. Okay, he was a major prick. And I didn't really shed a tear all that much. Anyway, moving on. They had that feud, and that was a backstage feud, and the Bulldogs were gone soon, and then British Bulldog would come back a little bit later. So that was some pretty good stuff. Really good match with 10 teams involved. It's a lot all that beef, pal, but it was a lot of fun. Number 15, the All-Americans. Luger, the Steiners, and Undertaker with an American flag underneath his jacket. That was hilarious. Versus the Foreign Fanatics, which was Crush, Quebecer Jacques, Ludwig Borga, and Yokozuna. Survivor Series 1993. All about continuing the Luger-Yokozuna build because Vince thought that this could carry to WrestleMania even though fans really soured on Lex after he didn't win the championship at SummerSlam 93 when he celebrated via countout, and good God, Vince, what the hell were you thinking? That aside, good match despite the fact Ludwig Borga was involved. Luger just wasn't ever over enough or over as much as he was after that. After SummerSlam 1993, they cooled off on him. And then really cooled off on him at the Royal Rumble 94 when they went with Brett over Luger. Wait a minute, McMahon, who won this thing? Also, I'm really excited for the Royal Rumble. It's going to be coming up in a couple months. I'm going to probably do a few retro reviews of like some of maybe the not so good ones. I might talk Derb and we might do some watch-alongs of that. So anyway, this was a fun match. And then we go number 14. It's Jeff Hardy, Kane, Rey Mysterio, and Triple H versus Finlay, Big Daddy V, Mr. Candy, MVP, and Lashley. 4-on-5 match, Survivor Series 2007. So you had Triple H and Jeff Hardy. They had been feuding. MVP had been feuding with Matt Hardy, but then Matt Hardy got hurt. Big Daddy V was also there. You had Lashley. It was raw. If I'm right, it was Raw, and it was just a bunch of guys mixed together. Really, I think it was like Raw and SmackDown, but I don't even necessarily remember. I think it was Raw, but it was just really, really weird to see Lashley featured here when, you know, Lashley was like gone from the company like soon after this. I mean, if I recall correctly, he was gone within he was gone like very, very soon after this. He had an incident where, you know, with Michael Hayes probably being racist, shock of shocks, and he decided to leave. The match was good. Maybe it wasn't everybody's cup of tea, as I've said about some of these matches, but I enjoyed it. And 4-on-5, of course, the faces won. Why wouldn't the faces win with that? Number 13, Furnace and LaFon and the Godwins versus Bulldog, Owen, and the New Rockers, which were Leif Cassidy, a.k.a. Al Snow, and Mari Jannetty, Survivor Series 1996. Great showcase for Furnace and LaFon. Bulldog and Owen had a bit of their verbal spat here, even though they were the tag champions at the time. Godwins were, you know, pretty over at this point, and the New Rockers didn't necessarily work, but it was what it was. It was a bit odd. It was a bit odd to see these guys mixed together, because you could just have Furnace and LaFon against Owen and Bulldog, but still, you needed to do traditional Survivor Series stuff. It was enjoyable. I liked this. I thought it was a whole lot of fun, and really, it was great. It was a great showcase for Furnace and LaFon. I love the match. We get to number 12. Andre, Dino Bravo, Mr. Perfect, Rick Rude, Harley Race versus Jake Roberts, Jim Duggan, Ken Patera, Scott Casey, and Tito Santana, Survivor Series 1988. Well, it was one of Andre's last appearances. He had an appearance in a match at 89, and then, you know, by this point, though, he was totally broken down. They put him in these matches really to extend his career and to hide the fact that he was broken down. His body was busted. He couldn't do as much as he wanted to anymore, but still, he was a gamer. He was going. And it was pretty good stuff. It was a very enjoyable match. Yeah, maybe it hasn't aged too terribly well, but you had some jobber guys, aka Scott Casey, and you had others that were in there. Some that were aging stars, and some that were, you know, young up and coming stars. It was at least a good mix. You had established guys, younger guys, and it was a good way to, like, you know, have some feuds, you know, spurn off and everything, and work pretty well. And actually, Andre and Jake Roberts would actually end up working together soon after this at Mania 5. Yeah, that one wasn't all that good, though. Number 11, Team Miz versus Team Morrison. From Survivor Series 2009, it was Ziggler, McIntyre, Swagger, Miz, and Sheamus versus Morrison's team of Evan Bourne, almost said Jason Bourne, Finlay, John Morrison, Matt Hardy, and Shelton Benjamin. This is mostly famous for the fact that it was McIntyre, Miz, and Sheamus being the final three. Like, because Swagger they had already cooled off on by this point. Ziggler was not quite ascending to where he was yet. He would get to mid-card status and would get eventually to the main event status soon after this, or sometime after this. But with this, it was really nice to see, three guys that are being pushed. You had Morrison and Miz that had been a team, and after the draft, they had feuded a little bit. Well, Miz had turned on Morrison, and not like that. And it was nice to see they were going with younger guys. They were going with McIntyre. He would capture the Intercontinental Championship from Morrison at the next pay-per-view, TLC. Sheamus would capture the WWE Championship in a tables match in a bit of a botched finish against John Cena at the pay-per-view as well. So it was good stuff. It was pretty enjoyable. Miz would win the Money in the Bank the year later and would cash it in on Randy Orton at the following Survivor Series. Yay! Now we get to the top 10. Team Canada, British Bulldog, Furnace and LaFon, and Jim Neidhart versus Team USA, Vader, Goldust, Mark Merrow, and Steve Blackman. Mostly famous for the fact that at Survivor Series 1997, everybody wanted to see Shawn and Brett fight. They wanted to see them just have this clash, this monumental clash. And there was an undercard there. And this is a pretty good undercard. Vader and Goldust would end up feuding after this because Goldust would attack Vader and would, betray his team, betray Team USA. They were in Montreal, to be fair, so Team USA had won. The fans might have rioted. But this was very, very enjoyable, a very, very fun match. Hot crowd. And, of course, Team Canada was cheered wildly, mainly because all those guys were respected. And first, a little fun. At this point, it's just weird to see the career that they had in WWE, which really wasn't much of one. By 98, I think they were gone. I think this was like one of the last appearances they had on pay-per-view, at least one of the last memorable appearances. They might have appeared in the Battle Royal at, I believe, Mania 14 in March of 98. But other than that, I can't think of anything. Can't think of any other WWE appearances they had. Still, this is a good match, and that hot crowd was amazing. We get to number 9, Team Cena versus Team Authority. It was Cena, Dolph, Big Show, Rowan, and Ryback versus Team Authority, which was Kane, Luke Harper, Mark Henry, Rusev, and Seth Rollins. Survivor Series 2014. If Team Authority had lost, the Authority must disband. It was a great match. It was like 40 minutes of well-built stuff. Of course, Big Show would turn on his team because, of course, he would. Cena looked like he was he was going to come back, but then he got beat. So it was all down to Ziggler, and Ziggler managed to get it down to him and Rollins. And then Triple H interferes and does all this stuff. And of course, you know what's coming. Triple H puts Ziggler over, or puts Rollins over Ziggler. Referee comes down. The referee's in their pocket. 1, 2, and then, 1, and then right at 2, you had the Crow Sting, sounds. Sting makes his appearance. Crowd goes absolutely nuts. I go absolutely nuts because I didn't think it was going to happen. Sting shows up, stares on Triple H, Scorpion Death Drop, and then puts Ziggler over Rollins. 1, 2, 3. That's what it's most famous for. But this match actually was good up to that point. But that aftermath does push it over the top. And you would have thought they would have gone with Ziggler, and they totally fucking didn't. They had a chance to go with Ziggler at that point. When they didn't, that was it. Even though he had that feud with The Miz in 2016, once that was it, that was done. They were done. They could not push him anymore. So, because nobody was going to buy into it, even though Ziggler's a great athlete. Number 8, Andre, Butch Reed, King Kong Bundy, One Man Gang, and Rick Rude versus Bam Bam Bigelow, Don Morocco, Hulk Hogan, Ken Patera, Paul Orndorff. It was the main event of the first ever Survivor Series in 1987. Mainly notable for Bam Bam Bigelow trying to fight back against the odds and try to win 3-on-1. Andre would end up pinning him, because they were building towards Hogan and Andre in the big event, a Saturday Night's Main Event, where it would draw the biggest, one of the biggest TV ratings ever. People wanted to tune in and see the WrestleMania 3 rematch. But this was a pretty good match with a mix of a lot of good talents. Orndorff's last WWF appearance on pay-per-view, I believe. I think he was gone soon after this. I don't know if he was at the Rumble. I'm trying to go through in my head. I don't think he was. And if he appeared at Mania 4, I don't necessarily remember. So it's weird because Hogan and Orndorff feuded, and then they teamed up, and then they feuded again. And they were feuding just earlier that year. So it was a little bit odd, but it was some good stuff. This was really an enjoyable match, and nice to see Andre get a win. But boy, it was just so sad. Months after Mania 3, when he could barely move, and he could barely move here. Number 7, Team SmackDown versus Team Raw. Batista, Lashley, Bradshaw, Orton, and Ray versus Team Raw. Big Show, Carlito, Chris Masters, Kane, and Shawn Michaels, Survivor Series 2005. Orton would be the sole survivor here and in other ones, like in 2004, 2005, and even 2003. And I'm going to get to the 2003 match just in a minute. Hold your goddamn horses. Cue the people holding horses over their heads, like in that meme. This was a fabulous match. Team SmackDown winning was the right call at this point, because you had a lot of people, and Bradshaw, by the way, JBL, just want to make that clear. They had a great amount of feuds here and some really, really good stuff that they had going. You had Shawn that wanted to prove that he still had it, even though he would, have a few years after this, he wouldn't lead Team Raw to victory. It was just great stuff. It was really well done, well built, and then everybody celebrating with Randy Orton like he's great, and him and his father had just buried The Undertaker in a casket a month before. Why did I tell you that? Oh, because Undertaker's music hits. The crowd pops for Undertaker's dong. Say that how you will. And then he appears and comes down. Orton wants to be let down. Undertaker comes in, just unleashes on the goddamn locker room. Matt Hardy apparently vanishes out of the frame because he rumored did not want to get caught in that fracas and actually got buried for a little bit after that, or at least it's seemed that case. I don't know. I'm not blaming Matt Hardy. It just seemed a little weird that they suddenly started burying him for absolutely no reason. But Undertaker lays out everybody and just, it's going to feud with Orton at Hell in a Cell at Armageddon the following month. So this is a great match, though. We then get to number 6. The Bulldogs, Killer Bees, Rougeaus, Strike Force, and the Young Stallions versus the Bolsheviks, Demolition, Dream Team, Hart Foundation, and the Islanders 10-on-10 match at Survivor Series 1987. Pretty much like the other matches that I mentioned before in this countdown. Great stuff. Well wrestled. All these teams meant something when, you put certain teams together, certain teammates facing off. It was really good and really showed how loaded the tag division was in WWE. These are 10 teams of varying quality and stuff like that. It wasn't necessarily like the greatest thing, but it was a whole lot of fun. And for the star power that they had here, I gotta put it up, give it a shout out on this video right up here. Now we get to the top 5, and this is where things are really going to get interesting. You had Team SmackDown versus Team Raw from Survivor Series 2016. It was AJ Styles, Bray Wyatt, Dean Ambrose, Randy Orton, and Shane McMahon, and of course James Ellsworth was also there. Team Raw was comprised of Braun, Jericho, Owens, Roman, and Seth. And this was pretty goddamn good. This was 52 minutes. Now, there were times where the match drug on a little bit, but like 85% of it blew by. It blew by really damn good and actually was pretty damn entertaining. I really enjoyed this match. I thought the way they eliminated everybody was really good stuff. It would, it had teammates, teammates that were unlikely teammates because Jericho and Seth had just been, Owens and Seth had just been feuding the month before. Styles and Ambrose have been feuding for a while. Shane was trying to keep the peace as, the best in the world, which he would not be yet because he would have to be the best in the world sometime last year. But oh boy, that feels like forever ago. That was about a year ago. Good God, it feels like ages ago. If only it never happened. It did end with Wyatt and Orton being the final 2, which was a bit shocking. This was building to Orton and Wyatt being tag team champions, and then they would lose the championship, and then Orton would burn down his shed. Hooray! But this match was good. I really enjoyed this one. Fabulously well done. And now we move on to the top 4, as I have just a few minutes left, but this isn't going to take very long, guys. Number 4, Team Kingston versus Team Orton. Christian, Kofi, Henry, MVP, and Truth versus Team Orton, which was Punk, Cody, Orton, Teddy DiBiase Jr., and William Regal. Survivor Series, 2009. Mainly memorable for the fact that it was Kofi versus Punk and Orton 2-on-1 by the end. This match was very well done. 2009 was a very underappreciated pay-per-view, especially for the elimination matches and the 2 3-ways, because Jericho is from Winnipeg, you idiot. But also, this was just a great match, and Kofi got launched. He beat Punk, he beat Orton in quick succession. And we're like, we're going to push Kofi, and then stupid. And it took them 10 fucking years to start pushing Kofi. Well, just about 9 fucking years, but still, that was fun. But this was a great match. A great way to launch Kofi. It's just a shame they didn't use him a whole lot better after that because they had to listen to Orton. We then get to number 3. It's Team Bischoff, Jericho, Henry, Randy Orton, Christian, and Scott Steiner versus Team Austin. Booker, the Dudleys, RVD, and Shawn Michaels, Survivor Series 2003. Just over 25 minutes. I think it was nearly 30 minutes. If Austin's team lost, Austin would be fired. He was gone for all of a month. If Bischoff's team lost, Austin would not be, restricted to just being up people when they provoked him. So basically, he beat the shit out of anybody. This match was tremendously well done. Every elimination meant something. When they got down to Shawn being 1-on-3 and everything, this was actually, they were supposed to have Lance Storm in this. That whole boring chant thing was supposed to go somewhere. And then they pulled the rug out from under him. I would have liked to have seen Lance Storm maybe in the Shawn Michaels role. I don't know how well it would have worked, but it would have been nice to at least see Lance Storm in this match as opposed to, maybe Booker. And nothing against Booker at this point. Booker actually meant something, but maybe take out one of the Dudleys. But anyway, I digress. Shawn was 1-on-3. He got down to 1-on-1. And then Batista runs in when the referee's down. Batista bomb. Orton makes the cover. 1, 2, 3. Austin can't get back to the ring in time. Austin's team's eliminated. And he was gone. He was gone forever for 1 month. He wasn't even gone for a month. It was like 3 weeks. Like, seriously. And then he was the sheriff. He was the law of WWE. Made no sense. Great match, though. Great fucking match. Then we get to match number 2, the Hart family, Bret, Owen, Bruce, and Keith versus Shawn and his Knights. Shawn Michaels, the Black Knight, which was Jeff Gaylord, the Blue Knight, which was Greg Valentine, the Red Knight, which was Barry Horowitz. Survivor Series 1993. This is supposed to be Jerry Lawler in Shawn Michaels' role, but nope, Jerry Lawler decided to be quite a naughty little idiot and allegedly sexually assault or rape some women, underage women at that. I know that might be shocking considering, Lawler seems like such a fine, upstanding person that's never made any perverted comments at all. But Shawn Michaels was slotted in here because actually Shawn would have made more sense in an earlier 1993 match. But he had to be put in here. And, Bret and Shawn, this wouldn't be the last time they face off at Survivor Series. Of course, we all remember it was 97, the Montreal Screwjob. This was a great match, though, and built the Bret-Owen feud because Owen was the only one that got eliminated when he checked on his brother after a guardrail spot. He got rolled up. And after the Hearts are celebrating, Owen comes out and gets in Bret's face and everything. And why didn't you help me? This kind of stuff. And oh my God, what the hell are you doing? I can't believe you would do this. Good Lord. That was a great feud. And that's why Owen kicked his leg out of his leg. Now, number 1, Team WWE versus Team WCW. Winner take all, Survivor Series 2001. Team WWE, Rock, Taker, Kane, Jericho, Big Show. Team WCW, Austin, Angle, RVD, Booker, Shane. This is how you cap off what was a terrible invasion angle. The invasion angle was absolute goddamn ass. Let's just all agree. It was goddamn ass. There were some moments that were pretty damn cool. They did some good business. But by God, if they could have, if Vince had been done with the XFL, he could have paid out a whole lot of money to buy people out of their contracts. And good God, we could have had this tremendous invasion angle. Actually, 3 years ago, I fantasy booked it just for fun when I was just having a whole lot of fun with this channel, as opposed to now, where I'm having a lot of fun with it. But with this is how you do an elimination match. It was fucking wonderful. It was goddamn great. I can't believe just how great this was. Every elimination did mean something. The cuts to the Alliance and the WWF locker room. Everybody was cheering, and eventually Kurt Angle would screw over Austin. Rock would get the win. 1, 2, 3. So the Alliance, WCW, WWE Alliance, all came down to, feud, all came down to Rock and Austin having a match again. That's peak WCW, WWE. The match was great, though. It's my favorite elimination match of all time. Easily. Maybe with the exception of War Games. War Games was never an elimination match. It was always War Games, the match beyond. But this was great. And that's capping off this list. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.